Nearly 69 million Americans, or 1 in 5, speak a language other than English at home. Yet English remains the primary language used to communicate weather emergencies here in the United States. That vulnerability was the catalyst for research and work by Dr. Joseph Trujillo-Falcon, an assistant professor at the University of Illinois Department of Climate, Meteorology, and Atmospheric Sciences, and the Department of Communications. Joseph, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so first things first, what inspired your work on that intersection between meteorology and language?
I would honestly call it a lived experience. I was born in Lima, Peru, but I moved to Dallas-Fort Worth in Texas at a very young age. And not having experienced thunderstorms, hail, or even tornadoes was a really wild surprise for me. I was often scared of these hazards, and I quickly noticed that my own Spanish-speaking communities also did not know what was happening. That was really a true catalyst to inspire me to study the weather more often and really also be able to connect with communities that we haven't been able to in the past.
Were there some specific cases you studied as part of your work where language barriers led to lives being lost?
Yeah, all the time. We conduct nationwide surveys and also visit survivors of various extreme weather hazards in the aftermath to really understand what was happening. One that really stuck out to me in particular was the December 10th to 11th, 2021 tornado outbreak, known as the deadliest December tornado outbreak in U.S. history, passed through 4 states in the Midwest and also the Southeast. And it was just really eye-opening to see folks that only spoke Spanish and were receiving these tornado warnings time and time again, but they could not make sense out of them. And a lot of them were taking additional time to try to understand what it was saying when they should have been taking that time to take shelter. So I learned a lot of firsthand accounts of just how important language information can be to ensure safety for all.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of the accounts, how were you able to go about conducting this research? Did you talk to folks on the ground impacted?
Yes, 100%. We got on a rental car and visited impacted communities several months after the disaster happened. And we visited anywhere from local churches, community organizations, local homes, and talked to the people that were impacted. We were really curious to see just how that situation unfolded because unlike big urban areas, especially areas in the Midwest and some areas in the Southeast, do not have access to Telemundo, Univision, or other Spanish language resources. So you're really just left to everything completely in English. And so in that sort of scenario where a big tornado is approaching your way, it can be really difficult to receive life-saving information. And so we asked them those questions head on and got a lot of insightful feedback that we then forwarded to NOAA to better enhance their communication products across the board.
Yeah, for sure. And you worked closely with NOAA on developing some new products, including the use of AI. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, with artificial intelligence continuing to emerge as next generation technology for us, we're making sure that it also impacts the way you receive weather warnings. You know, it's very difficult to translate from one language to another. At the National Weather Service, we have volunteer translation teams across the board. However, they also have to forecast, and that's their first duty at the end of the day. So to translate on top of it could be very overwhelming, and that's how we're using AI. Over the last 4 years, we've been training in AI specifically to understand weather and climate terminology. And little by little, we've reached up to 99% accuracy in some hazards and have reduced translation times for the Weather Service from about an hour to 2 to 3 minutes. And we've been trying to reimagine how that could look like in the future, not just in Spanish, but other non-English languages too. So we've been training that AI to translate into Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, French, Samoan, among other languages too.
Yeah, is this being applied to all National Weather Service offices or only a few select in trials?
We started off small. We actually looked at census data and saw where the biggest multilingual communities are across the country. And we started off in those offices. So far, though, we've reached over 13 million limited English proficient speakers just by the jurisdictions as to where they're located in. And so we're slowly starting to scale that effort upward so much that even this year, the National Hurricane Center announced that as part of their operations, they're going to start integrating some of this for hurricane season. So I think it's a very huge plus and benefit to so many communities out there.
Yeah, no kidding. What's the feedback been like from communities that are receiving this information so far?
They've been very grateful for it because at the end of the day, especially in areas that don't have any access to life-saving information, just having something is better than nothing. And so folks have been very resonant with it. And we've also been testing these products out using nationwide surveys too. And we gave them a human translation and then one made by our NOAA model-based AI tool, we actually found that there, especially in empowering people to act, sometimes the AI was doing slightly better than the human translations, and at least for Spanish speakers. And so it really does go to show that we've been testing this out with the communities themselves, they've been engaging with it, and thus we feel confident that it'll make a long-lasting impact in the years to come.
Yeah, for sure. The partnerships that you've developed along the way, not just with NOAA, other entities as well?
Yeah, NOAA, and then actually really funny enough here at Penn State University, there is a linguist by the name of John Lipsky, and he was actually the very first person that believed in this kind of work. I remember as an early graduate student, I was reading a book about just the varieties of language and how it can impact how people perceive various things. And I remember emailing the author of the book as a young graduate student, like, hey, I really love this book. I'd love to apply this to weather. Sure enough, it was a Penn State professor that took me under his wing and played a very pivotal role in bringing this topic up to the nationwide level. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of collaborators from various universities to even nonprofits and local organizations, because honestly, it's a collective effort. You know, I only know Spanish, and there's yet so many other languages. Here in this country, people practice over 350 languages, so there's a lot to work yet still to be done.
Wow, absolutely. Great work. And I think it gets to the core of why risk communication is so important. Talk a little bit about that and kind of next steps in this work that you're doing.
100%. Just because I always love to emphasize that the way we've been able to forecast and the way we've been able to communicate is really unprecedented, just given that just a couple of decades ago, our technology has reached new levels. But here's the thing, technology can advance as much as it wants to, but if it doesn't reach the communities we are intended for it to reach, what's the point? And I think this is where risk communication is just so important. We have to make sure that everything that we're advancing here in the atmospheric science world reaches these communities and make sure that it results in safety. And this is why I'm so passionate about this topic and really elevating the next generation of students and scholars to start integrating into it too. You know, I always tell my atmospheric science students, I'm not asking you to be a social scientist, but I'm asking you to be aware of your communities and to always think of them at every single step of the way, whether you make that forecast or whether you advance that next weather model.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Joseph Trujillo-Falcon from the University of Illinois, thank you so much for being here and talking about your research.
Thank you so much. This has been so amazing.
Yeah, and thank you. And we'll be back in just a moment with more.